It has recently been rumored that a Penguin Season 2 could be in production at DC Studios. If true, that is an immensely exciting development, as the Penguin Season 1 was one of my favorite seasons of television over the last few years, and I would absolutely love to see a new season, as long as it was made because the creatives who worked on the Penguin had a brand new story they just had to tell, not just because WB and DC Studios were writing some massive checks and begging them to come back. However, when it comes to Season 2 of the Penguin, where could the story go? Who could show up? Who could be the villain? I have so many questions and hopes for a Penguin Season 2 that I wanted to talk about it and discuss some things that I would love to see in a potential Season 2 of The Penguin. Of course, if we ever get a Season 2 of The Penguin, it would certainly be coming out after The Batman 2, and the events of that film would very likely set the stage for Penguin's next story, so it's hard to say with any certainty where Oz's story most likely would be headed in a potential Season 2 without seeing The Batman 2, but nevertheless, I will still try to make some educated guesses about what a Season 2 could tackle. At the end of Penguin Season 1, the Penguin had set himself up to be the top crime boss in all of Gotham after his dismantling of the Maroni and Falcone crime families. However, even though Penguin may be greatly positioned to be the top dog in Gotham, and he may have great relations with many of the other smaller crime families and organizations, as he did lead the revolution which led to many second-in-commands killing their bosses and assuming control, but there will almost certainly be somebody new that challenges his power and aims to be the top crime boss in all of Gotham, and a character that I think would make for a great antagonist in a potential Season 2 is Black Mask, who is a character that I think would absolutely fit the tone of Matt Reeves' Batman universe, and more specifically that of the Penguin, which was allowed to go to even darker places, and that is where Black Mask excels. As a character, Black Mask is often depicted as sadistic, egotistical, a maniac with an extremely bad temper that makes him a threat at all times, as you never know what he's going to do. I have personally thought he's quite an underrated Batman villain. No, I don't put him in my top 10 Batman villains list, which is an extremely hard list to crack considering Batman's amazing rogues gallery, but I do think he's been pretty underutilized across comics, gaming, movies, and television. And I know I'm saying that as we are not too far removed from seeing Black Mask in live action in the Birds of Prey movie, where he was played by Ewan McGregor, and I thought overall the depiction was solid. It was a character played more for laughs than intimidation in my opinion, but I thought it fit the tone of the movie, and even though I have probably only watched that movie 2 or 3 times since its release, I do find Black Mask's performance to be one of the best parts of the movie, of course alongside Margot Robbie, who is just gold as Harley Quinn. However, even though we are only a few years removed from seeing Black Mask in the DCEU, I think he could definitely use a fresh adaptation that focuses more on Black Mask as a crime boss and how dark and intimidating a character that he can truly be, and I think he would be a perfect rival for Oz. But it's not just Black Mask who I think could serve in this role, even though that would be my top choice. Perhaps there are several crime bosses vying for control, or maybe it's just somebody else that they choose. There are also some other great options in the Batman comic history. For example, even though I think it's very unlikely because I think the character is probably a little bit too goofy for this specific universe, but I would love to see somebody like Ventriloquist if Black Mask was not an option. I totally get he is definitely a bit more out there when it comes to Batman villains, and I think probably doesn't fit this universe, but I've always really liked the character, and I would be fascinated to see how he could fit in something like this or even the DCU, and I think he's far more interesting than a character like Rupert Thorne, for example, who could also be an option, but I definitely think is a bit less exciting, because I do think Thorne is somebody who just leans a little bit too much into being the same type of characters as like the Maronis and Falcones. There's nothing new or unique with that character. It's just your standard mob boss in Gotham City. There's also somebody like Great White Shark, who also probably leans a bit more into the fantastical, but for this universe, I think they could easily adapt him and make him more realistic, and I think he'd bring a good element of horror and danger that would be different from what we have gotten in the past with the Falcones and the Maronis. At the end of the day, there are a lot of options for a new rival for Oz to battle throughout Gotham. My top choice would of course be Black Mask, but I would love to hear who you'd like to see perhaps as the new rival to Oz in the streets of Gotham. Something small that really doesn't pertain to a specific storyline. It could certainly work story-wise, but it's just kind of an aesthetic choice I want is I really want Penguin to have a brand new Iceberg Lounge in Penguin Season 2 that falls more in line visually with what we've been accustomed to seeing throughout comics and animation. I know to some this may seem dumb, but for me, the Iceberg Lounge, which oftentimes operates as Oz's base of operations, is just so damn iconic, not only for Penguin, but Gotham City in general, and I absolutely would love to see a new version in this universe. I want to be clear, it's not like I disliked what we got in the Batman one. I actually thought that was a really cool, like, modern interpretation of what the Iceberg Lounge could be, but I really want something that fits more in line with the classy, upscale vibe of the Iceberg Lounge that oftentimes is even filled with ice sculptures, and it's just perfect, and based on Oz's desires, I do think it makes sense where he wants to move up in society, he wants to start mingling specifically in politics. I think a more classy vibe and a traditional Iceberg Lounge better fits with his squeaky clean image that he's trying to show off and would allow for him to still operate nefariously behind the scenes. scenes. Now, it goes without saying, I feel like, but I'm still gonna say it anyways, we absolutely need more Sofia Falcone in season 2, as she was an absolute scene stealer in season 1, and I feel like there's a large section of fans who would say that she was their favorite character in the entire series. Hell, for some, she might even be their favorite character in the entire Matt Reeves Batman universe. And at the end of season 1, we got a juicy cliffhanger that sets up Sofia and Selina Kyle connecting and perhaps working together in the future, which would just be absolutely awesome to see. Now, I have no idea if their team up would be specifically to take out Oz, or perhaps just do something completely on their own as they go city to city, maybe living a new life, or maybe even they're just pen pals as Sofia is locked up in Arkham for the entirety of Penguin season 2. There's a lot of different ways they could take that, but regardless, we need Sofia Falcone in Penguin season 2. The only reason it'd be okay to exclude her from Penguin season 2 is if they were going to make a separate spin-off series featuring Catwoman and Sofia Falcone, which has not been rumored, I want to be clear. I think briefly it was rumored that we might be getting a Catwoman spin-off, but this was, like 4 years ago, so it seems very unlikely that that's going to happen, so please just put Sofia in Penguin season 2. Also, even though I know it's not happening, but for like the final episode, especially if Penguin is blowing shit up all across Gotham City, could we please find a way to incorporate Batman? We know that the Penguin is clearly on Batman's radar by the end of season 1. If Penguin were to be doing anything crazy in season 2, it would simply feel wrong to not have Batman and kind of depict Batman as being just clueless and possibly even inept. I totally get the justification in season 1 that he was busy with other things, especially after the flood, and maybe he didn't really think Oz was worth, keeping an eye on all the time, but it was a bit odd for shit to be blowing up in the streets of Gotham and Batman to not be present, especially in a season 2 where it's made very clear at the end of season 1, Penguin is now on his radar. I don't even need to see Robert Pattinson himself. You could just have a stand-in in the suit, and maybe we see it from like the Thug's perspective. You just see this creature in the shadows. That would be completely fine for me. He just has to be there. I don't need him to even have any speaking roles. Just please include Batman, especially if Penguin is going to be doing any crazy shit in the streets of Gotham, which I totally expect he would be doing at some point in season 2. But I guess if it's a legal issue, I'm not really going to fault DC Studios and WB, because what the hell can you do? But I still have no idea what the whole legal reason would be for not having him in the series. At the end of Penguin season 1, it was made very clear that the Penguin wanted to move higher up in society and work his way into Gotham politics, and one storyline that I'd be fascinated to see in this universe is Penguin actually achieving his goal and becoming the mayor of Gotham City. Now, of course, this story has been done in the comics before. Most notably, I always think of Batman Earth 1, which is a universe it seems Matt Reeves has taken heavy inspiration from in the past, and I think seeing how this Batman would handle somebody like Penguin as mayor would be absolutely fascinating. Now, I know to some this could be a little overkill with what we are getting from Daredevil Born Again, where we have Kingpin as the mayor of New York City, which I understand to an extent, but I just think the Batman universe would be able to do more with the storyline itself, and perhaps we could introduce a group like the Court of Owls, which has been teased in the past, that could actually be the ones serving as the puppet masters in the background, and perhaps Oz has aligned himself with them so that he can feel more important and grab more power. And yes, one of the things that I do want to see in a potential Penguin season 2 is the Court, which who knows, they may already be in the Batman 2. We honestly have no idea as of right now, but as we have Penguin consistently working his way up through Gotham society, first becoming a huge crime lord, then working his way up into politics, I think it'd make a lot of sense for him to run into the Court and find out who's really running the city behind the scenes. And like I've said several times in the past, and I know some of you disagree with me, which is totally okay, but I really do think that the story Matt Reeves wants to tell in his Batman universe is going to conclude with the Court of Owls and exposing this rich elite group that is running the city behind the scenes. And I really think it'd be a rich story to see Matt Reeves play out in this universe, and I think a fun way to introduce them, if they're not introduced in the Batman 2, would be in a Penguin season 2 in between the Batman 2 and 3. That's of course if we ever get a Batman 3. I'm optimistic, but we really never know, especially with how these universes change every day, it seems like. But now I want to know, what do you want to see in the Penguin season 2? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.